for joining us today on the Coastal and Progressive Rainbow Forum on Society Bites Radio. Today we will be speaking with Marlene RESNICK SIMONS, and she has an incredible book out called If Only They Came with Instructions. I'm going to give you a little introduction of Marlene's history here. Marlene has worked with parents and teachers and children for 30 years, directed foster care and counseling programs, provided parent and teacher education in Massachusetts and Florida. She also taught children, family, teachers relations at the University of South Florida for 8 years. She holds a Master of Arts in Family Studies from Goddard College and had the privilege of attending the program on negotiations at Harvard Law School, as well as 3 years in the Ph.D. program on public policy and child welfare. She is a mother and grandmother. She is the author of The Only They Came with Instructions, a guide for parents. Nobody's perfect, parenting in a world of change. Her latest book, as well as a series of books for first grade students and their families dealing with health and safety issues. Okay, with that, Marlene, I'm going to introduce you and let you tell us a little bit more about what led you to writing the book, If Only They Came with Instructions.
Okay, Steve, thank you for having me here and introducing me today to your audience. I wrote If Only They Came with Instructions, a guide for parents, because it was in a transition. I was moving from Massachusetts to Florida, and I had close to 20 years of working with parents and teachers in the Massachusetts area. And I worked for two different groups. One was Families First, which at the time I started primarily addressed two-parent professional families. And I also worked for the Massachusetts Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. And I did about 5 parenting groups a week for them for many, many years. And that population included parents who had their children removed due to abuse or neglect, or the judge had referred them because they were at risk of having their children removed if they didn't improve their parenting practices. So those were the two very different populations that I worked with. And as I was moving, I thought, I need to put the way that I do these groups into a book, because it was a little different from all the other parenting programs I had attended or been a part of, which were very, very helpful for me in my own parenting work and in working in the very beginning with foster parents and birth parents who were having their children removed or at risk of that. So I wanted to help parents go through a process that could help them individually if they were not being a part of a parenting group, which I really recommend for all parents. So what I did was I had a series of 10 sessions that I used, and they were focused first on helping parents to look at their own backgrounds, how they were parented, what they liked, what they didn't like, and also the kinds of approaches that they were going to choose to take with their own children. So, and then there are bits of sessions on basically what is the knowledge that you need to do the parenting job well, and what are the skills to do the parenting job well, and what's the baggage you're bringing into this job from your own childhood. And sometimes we're not even aware of that until we hear ourselves yelling words that came out of the mouth of our mother or father that we swore we were never going to say when we were parents. So often we find ourselves in those places. That self-reflection, the addition of the kind of knowledge that people need, particularly about ages and stages of development, the kinds of skills parents need, both in dealing with their own emotions and in dealing with their children's emotions, and problem-solving skills, and refocusing what their job is, really understanding what your job is as a parent, because parents don't really look at what they're doing as a job in the same way. If we were going in to apply for a job in a particular sector, there's clearly qualifications and there are clearly objectives for the job that are put out there. We don't have that with parenting. People come into the job. They may have had a healthy childhood with parents who were understanding and knowledgeable. They may have had a very abusive childhood where there was emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and those things take their toll. And if people don't have the ability to process some of that, then a lot of that gets translated into how they deal with their own children. So that was my project as I moved to Florida. And that was the big reason why I wrote the book, that I feel like if there were instructions for parents, it would not be hurt, hit, and humiliate for better performance. And yet that's what many parents resort to because they don't have the knowledge and the skills to do things differently. So that was my goal, was to give parents the insight, a little bit about the knowledge, a little bit about the skills, a little bit about the work that they needed to do themselves, and basically problem-solving skills, whether it was emotional or other interactions with other people, with their children, how they deal with problems. And the skills of problem-solving really apply to everybody, whether, when as I said, I had the privilege of spending time a year at the program on negotiation at Harvard Law School. And when I came out of that, I thought, this is exactly what parenting education is about. And what I realized right off the bat was it doesn't really matter if you're dealing with a 4-year-old child who's having a temper tantrum or you're sitting down to an international peace negotiation with 25 people. The rules are the same. You have to be willing to listen. You have to be willing to ask for what you want. You have to be willing to compromise. And those are the same, whether you're dealing with children or whether you're dealing with a business in a business negotiation or not. So I'll stop there because that was really what I wanted to do when I wrote that book. And because I was leaving and not sure what I was coming to in Florida, I thought this is the time to put it all together for me.
Marlene, one of the things that impressed me when I read the book was some of the things how you kind of projected out what would happen to people, if, and I was really, really taken aback by this. And then you can see a little bit of my background so you understand why. More than 25 years ago, I helped found a program for at-risk youth in a major U.S. city, and probably one of the most ethnically mixed high schools in the nation. 70-some different nationalities and 50-some different languages, an incredible number. And
wow.
The program is still going on. Anyway, I worked with that program and others off and on for the years, basically rescuing and trying to keep young people on the right path, and with various NGOs. And I've seen so much, and what your book showed me, how correct you were and how right you were, that's saying that the behavior of the parents, and haven't seen it firsthand in some cases, when I was, I would read the case notes and whatever was going on, then see the end result with the children, that come out are the young adults. So
yes.
that's and give us just. Then I'm going to ask you a question here afterwards. But I want you to give some examples of what you kind of project will happen. I remember in there you were saying, you just said a minute ago, I can't remember the term, hurt, hit, and humiliate. I think you said hit, hurt, and humiliate, and that term. Yes. And what has happened to those children in some cases. Would you give some examples of what you expect to happen to young people when they're treated that way? Okay, go ahead. Yeah, no, that's it.
No,
that's
go ahead.
It.
Okay. Please finish.
Well, all I was going to say was that this I've seen so often in what the end result is. And, of course, sometimes you get surprised. Sometimes you know what they went through and seeing but they've turned out very well. And it's amazing to me that they managed to survive some of the stuff they went through. So,
Yes.
yeah, but anyway, go give us some of your examples that you cited in your book there. And and again, I saw how right you were.
Okay, I'm going to give you a quote by Arno Gruen, who is an author I read years ago, and some of his quotes have stayed with me for many years. And this quote is, "At the root of evil lies self-hatred, a rage that begins in childhood when autonomy is surrendered in exchange for the love of those who wield power over us." That was written by Arno Gruen in the book, The Insanity of Normality Toward Understanding Human Destructiveness. And I found this reality of how hate is incubated in the early years, something that is not well understood by most people, particularly parents. And it's due to the fact that child development information is hardly anywhere unless you take a couple of psychology classes or you're an early childhood specialist. I think that we as a culture are confused not only about how children learn, but we're lacking a lot of information. And part of what happened recently in Washington on January 6th, what I saw enraged 4-year-olds in adult bodies acting out the rage and hatred that they felt. And they were provided a target through lies and through mass media that allowed them to believe something about someone. And this is true whether we're dealing with racism or anti-Semitism. This rage finds a target. There's a culturally defined target that people feel justified. But only those people who really have had such experience, and it's not that all of those people were physically abused, but humiliated and devalued, I would pretty much bet people who participated in that had that experience as young children. So that I will give you as an example of parenting without healthy guidance.
That's
and go ahead.
No, I was just saying excellent. It was an excellent example, and I couldn't agree with you more based on what I read and based on my own knowledge. And you're exactly right. And you've seen, to me, a lot of people who are with only a little bit of education. I have a graduate degree too, but I thought, people I talked to with only a basic education you'd think they would see through the lies and stuff that caused them to behave in the way they did. But they're so enraged with false information and lies that again, it came from some media sources, and if you see their own statements when they were caught on film there, when they were doing what they were doing, you thought, what in the world what were they thinking when they did something like this?
Yes. And one of the things that I talk about, and not so much in this book, but in the next one, so maybe I'll save that for the second discussion, the lack of information that people think that they're parents and that they know how to do the job. I respond to a number of different parenting chats online, and some of them are so distressing because people are really struggling with the issues of having an out-of-control 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and they don't want to hit them, but they don't know what else to do. And I think, this is not just like a give them 2 sentences. They need a whole course. They need to be